also have credentials, meaning I studied. I have a master in computational linguistics. I have a master in interdisciplinary studies, and I have a master in, and I have a PhD in sociology. I'm also gardening as crazy. As I said to the kids, I have a very strong connection with plants. It's a very long one. A few weeks ago, Reverend Bridget asked, "Whose are we?" And deep down, due to some peculiarities of my upbringing, and even if I love my friends, love my family, love this beacon community, which is so wonderful, I am of the woods and the hills and of the little critters. It's just something that came to me before people did. And this changed the way I see plants. And when I garden, and I've been gardening for 45, 50 years now, I tend to think about plants, and then I think about all the rest. So this sermon is about a few things that came to my mind while I was tending the garden. And it will go like that. I talk about gardening a bit, and get deep into the weeds, and then abstract on some thoughts that come out with dealing with the weeds and can be applied to our communities and our society. So, one of the things that I started appreciating more through the years, as I started gardening here, I had to learn about a completely new ecosystem. It's just different. Even if you move to, I don't know, Pennsylvania, you will have to learn gardening again because it is different. And one of the things that I realized recently is that we only look at the surface frequently, the flowers, oh, they're so pretty. The reason my father was a terrible gardener is because he only looked at the flowers. He never realized that the entire plant is underneath. Most of the plant is under the soil. And then there are other things. Think about fungi. They could literally be the internet of the woods. There are studies that are coming out showing that plants do communicate, not with words, as the Mary Oliver poem said, but with chemicals, which pass through the roots, not only in between plants of the same species, but in between different group of plants and said fungi that connect things in the wood. So tending the soil goes way beyond just the health of plants, is supporting an entire ecosystem community. And I think I should start with a quick intro to how I garden, because how I garden reflects on how I deal with people and other things too. You need to know the garden before you start doing anything in it. You need to know your community before you start doing anything in it. So you walk into a new garden, into a new place, and it is already alive. Other people have lived there. Oh, by the way, speaking of other people, I think we should note that we live on stolen land. We should probably call, before starting any discussion, to the Anishinaabe, the people who originally lived in the southeast Michigan, up to the entire Great Lake region, actually. They were a confederacy known as the Three Fires, the No Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. And I think as a congregation, we should probably try to learn more about that, because just acknowledging that they were here and then we came, and I'm not saying anybody stole their house, I'm pretty sure everybody paid for it, but those who acquired the land originally didn't come here really nicely, just to put it in a very delicate way. So the getting acquainted with the garden is essential to understand what's going on before you start touching it. And from the spiritual perspective, I approach gardening as a witch, as a steward or a warden. So a witch doesn't own the plants, the animals, the land that she tends to. If anything, she's owned by them because you owe them, literally, for all the support they give us. And the other point is, we don't own the land. The land is something that is for the future generations. We need to keep it for those who will come after us, and those who stay there as we pass, see the trees. So if you're gardening, leave the soil better than what you had when you started. And the title of the sermon outside is about weeds. Weeds is a very controversial topic because it divides things into bad and good. Things that we like, things we don't like, things we want, things we don't want, in an extremely arbitrary way. So, saponaria, soapwort. It grows along the streams in Europe. My father taught me how to use it to wash my hands when I was a kid, and we were just hiking, as I said, and you can just take some of the leaves and you put it in the water, rub in your hands, you'll get soap. Or a soapy situation where you can wash your hands. It's quite invasive. I have it in my garden because I found it and I was like, oh, I love you, I remember when I was a child. And then I realized, no. On the other hand, goldenrod, which is a lovely native and an essential plant over here, is invasive in Europe. So things are not so neat as we think they are. Because the reason we garden in a certain way, the things we appreciate, the things that we want or do not want in the garden are linked to a larger social aspiration. So we want a lawn, which is one of the most polluting option that you can imagine. Lawn care is responsible for probably 1/3 of pollution, water pollution in the United States. But the lawn is what we have been sold as the way we want to have a garden, and in many places, if you don't have a lawn and you don't keep it tidy, you will get a fine. So it's not individual, it's really the social aspects that are pulling us from every side. And weeds are also something we do not want when we start planning for example, a vegetable garden, because we want the vegetables to have space to grow. We got the new house that was 2019. In the fall, I decided, well, I need garlic. Garlic is essential, as you may know. And there was a little raised bed. It was not in great conditions. It was filled with potting soil, it was dry, there was stuff growing in it that was not doing well. So I decided, okay, I'll clean this up and I will get my garlic in there. That was quite an adventure because I started pulling and some things came out immediately. The soil was really dry, which was quite strange. Like, why is the soil so bad here? And as I started pulling, quackweed, quackgrass, the one that I was showing the kids before, was the main, let's say, enemy for now. And I pulled, and under the grass, there was weed barrier or weed cloth. No, I don't usually believe in demonic presences or, demonic forces, but when you start talking about wheat barriers and wheat cloth, I rest my judgment. I don't know. The thing is evil. What happens? The very long roots that I showed you earlier weave themselves into the wheat barrier, creating an impenetrable mat. I see that you have had this experience before, right? Right. So the roots are in the wheat barrier. They, of course, are anchored in the soil underneath, and there's nothing you can do. It's a fight. You really have to get the entire thing out. And I was pulling, and I was like, this reminds me of something else. This reminds me of how we deal with racism in the American society by covering it up. So what happened at a certain point in US history is that the United States decided collectively that racism was no longer a good image, and they put a wheat barrier on it, literally. They decided that certain things should not be so visible anymore, so they covered them neatly, never addressing the roots of the problems, of course. So you have this nice raised bed with the wheat barrier underneath, and you fill it up with fake soil. Potting soil is not soil that you put in the garden, it's for pots. In the garden it doesn't mesh with the rest of the soil and will create a very dry situation for your plants. Don't do it. The same happened with communities. You put in a cover that is not part of the ecosystem of what you already have, and it remains separated. The bad actors keep doing their work just undercover, and they're not there. And then you plant some, you see the garden catalogs that will come to everybody's home in December. There's all these seedlings put together in a raised bed that nobody who knows raised bed will ever be able to grow them that way. Those are adult plants that have been transplanted there for taking pictures. And no, they will not survive like that. But the picture is very fancy and it shows very well from the distance. I was coming from Italy. I knew the United States from the movies. I thought this country didn't have any problem with racism and discrimination and whatnot. Will Smith was all over the movies that I saw. Cool guy. He was getting the lead roles. Things must be good, right? The thing I started looking into is like, how do we act in our society that in ways that are like the weed cloth? What do we do to hide things because it's more convenient? It took me a while. I finally got rid of it, and I was able then to water the soil, which is another thing that applies to people. Don't water people, they will not take it well. The equivalent for people and communities would be kindness and compassion. That's the water for the beloved community. Once the soil is soft again, you can add nutrients. Not add nutrients to people, like manure will not work. Love would be the option. And then you can grow stuff. You can grow the beloved community, you can grow garlic, in my case. So next year, I saw another spot in the garden that needed to be converted from lawn to, in this case, a pollinator strip. And this time I did the thing right. I pulled about 1 foot of arborist wood chips on top of it, let it stay for the winter. Almost everything disappeared under the wood chips. Guess what didn't? Quack grass. So coming spring, the thing was verdant and growing and looked very, very healthy. And I was going through a bad period in my life and decided, okay, I'll weed. And I started pulling and pulling and pulling, and I think I pulled for 2 weeks straight. It was absolutely cathartic. Piles and piles of those very long rhizomes that I showed you earlier. And I knew that I was doing the right thing. I went at it with all the anger repressed that I had, and I couldn't, show elsewhere. And I weeded. And I got covered in mosquito bites. Because as it happens, if you're hungry, you will breathe heavily, and all the CO2 that you are producing will call all the mosquitoes in the neighborhood and tell them, hey, food there. And all of a sudden, I was thinking again about social stuff. And as we get really upset with many things that go around us, and we want them gone. We want to fight and fight the bad people, the bad dogs, the unanointed kings, and all the people on each side of the political divide, and sometimes not even political, it's just, being on different sides for something. And we circle each other like these bloody, thirsty mosquitoes, and we want to fight because we think we are right. And those people are bad, those thoughts are bad, those ideas are bad, bad thoughts, bad people, bad, everything is bad. And I was being bitten. I was like, something is not going the way I would like here. Do we really need all this anger? Why are we carrying this anger? Is it even useful? And even when you're trying to get out of the political debate, I garden organically, I am in the organic gardening groups, and I am in the pollinator groups, and I am in the control your invasive groups, right? And people are angry. They are fighting those weeds like it was a battle for life, because clearly they cannot fight other things. They need wine when they're done weeding, and they go at each other's throats. And again, it's like, for weeds? Seriously? Honestly, it happened here. We had people leave our congregation because of a spat about weeding. That was many years ago, but yes, it happened. So we are carrying all this anger. The plants, in the meanwhile, are oblivious. They go by their own ways, and they actually support each other. They don't see other plants as weeds. They want to spread, they want to reproduce. We are the ones who brought them here, all the invasive. They didn't come flying through the Atlantic. They came on the ships and the planes and in our bags because we wanted them here for many, many reasons. Some of them valid, some of them ludicrous. Some happened just because we didn't know any better. And they are just here trying to do what they did previously in whichever place they were from. And I started to develop quite an admiration for those plants I'm trying to remove from my garden, because, see, there's gardening tip. A lot of people think, oh, I have this aggressive plant. I will put another aggressive plant so that it will fight it. Doesn't work. They will become allies. They don't care. They will intertwine their rhizomes and their roots and get stronger together, which is again a lesson we may want to learn, because we are very bad at making allies. and at selecting people. And I know I did that mistake so many times. So those people are, I don't know, they look too pretty for me to approach, or do something. And it's like, I'll stay on my side. And I realized that that's not a good tactic. The other thing that is a good reflection on social aspects is that we fight back. They don't fight back by attacking us, but they are extremely resilient. For example, those rhizomes, if cut, they will spread. Any tiny piece, less than 1 inch, will sprout a new plant. And that plant, if we're talking about those grasses, will become a meters-long network of roots that will sprout other plants as soon as you cut them. Human societies do the same. We have seen the rise of political movements that have been boiling underground for decades, and then they gain enough strength, or the climate changes a bit, and they sprout up. And you were like, where were these people before? Oh, they were there. They were already there. They were just not feeling that the conditions were right to show up themselves out in the sun. And it goes both ways. We should learn from them as we create political strength and we try to change society. We can move underground for as long as we think it is important to keep ourselves safe and to gather strength and to find allies. That's the history of humanity, literally. But there is also another point. Let's go back to the wood chips. The wood chips restore the soil because they allow nutrients to slowly leak into the soil, adding organic matter. They protect the soil from extreme temperature swings, and they keep the water in place when it's dry. During the long time, the month long that we had drought, all the areas that had wood chips around the garden, my house here, were doing pretty fine because humidity was kept at the root level. The other thing is you had beneficial plants. The native plants you want to add, even if you have not removed all the other unwanted plants, when the native plants grow and become larger and stronger, what was once, a terrible, horrible, obnoxious enemy, weed, will just be one plant among many others. It will not be the protagonist. It will just one of many. And the other plants will be able to live with it without any problem. And finally, I think it is not a war. That is something I was, again, trying to discuss in those social media groups. Bad place, of course. But it is not a war. In the way we build community and in the way we build our gardens, which is, for me, exactly the same thing, it is way more efficient to handle those rhizomes with a gentle touch, because those things are made to break and to multiply. And if instead we add nutrients, we add kindness, we add protection, it will be way easier to get them out. And let's be honest, if we think of racism as a weed, we need that out. It's not something we can condone, it's not something we can be shy about, but it's also not something we can remove with an axe. Compassion and kindness will be, most likely, better tools to go at the root of the problem, because the direct fight just makes things break more, and when they break, as we see before, they do multiply. Now we are getting to the conclusion of this thing. Captives. I'm keeping you captive. Well, I'll let you go soon. I'm terrible at the 5-paragraph essays, right? They told me in the United States, you do the 5-paragraph essay, I had to learn that. Never been good. So I wrote this thing, put it down, and then asked Claude, which is Anthropic AI large language model, to write my paragraph, my conclusion, and it did a good job, so I'm going to read it to you. Perhaps the most profound lesson that, from that frustrating patch of wet grass is this. Sustainable change, whether in our garden or our society, requires us to tend the soil itself, not just battle what grows from it. The wheat cloth taught us that covering problems only allows them to grow stronger and more entangled beneath the surface. But the wood chips showed us another way, patient work that create conditions where what we want to flourish then take root and spread naturally. When we approach both weeds and social challenges with curiosity rather than rage, with long-term soil building rather than quick fixes, we discover that transformation becomes not a war to be won, but a garden to be tended. And like those underground alliances between root systems, maybe our own healing lies not in fighting each other with increasing fury, but in recognizing that we are all part of the same ecosystem, all growing from the same soil, all capable of growing towards the light when given the right conditions. That's a good ending paragraph. Those things are fantastic, trust me. You need to use them carefully, but they're really good. And something is missing. First of all, there is the work under the metaphor. As said, words are great, but we need to get into the garden and dig because we want to plant that garlic. At least I want to plant the garlic. So respecting weeds, learning for weeds is useful, is important, because weeds are weeds, plants. But humans are the main deal. And respecting humans is essential, but accepting bad behaviors and bullying and bad ideas, no, we don't need to do that. And I think here comes the point that when mixing in that wonderfully written paragraph, cui prodest, who benefits from all of this? Cui prodest, of course, is from Seneca, who was the great Stoic philosopher of Imperial Rome, who said exactly that. Those who benefit from a situation are those creating, instigating, and cultivating it. Those who benefit from racism are those creating, instigating, and cultivating it. Those who benefit from classism are those creating, instigating, and cultivating it. Classism and racism in this country are one and the same. Those who benefit from making everyone feel scared and alone are those creating, instigating, and cultivating the conditions in which you feel scared, alone, and helpless. Who benefits from us being scared? The work for us, tending the garden of the beloved community, is to make it more welcoming, more fertile, more sustainable. That's work for us, but for us and each individually. I will leave you with a question. Who wants us to buy the damn wheat cloth?